And one of the most shocking developments I've seen yet dealing with the global pandemic, we have this story from the Daily Mail. French border guards impound trucks filled with 130,000 face masks bound for Britain for NHS workers battling coronavirus. Apparently, they had done something similar with hand sanitizer. And this says to me that the European Union is nothing but name only. Now, I know Britain they're out. They did Brexit, but they're still in a transitionary period. I am shocked to see this story. Now, some people are pushing back. People in France I'm seeing on the internet are claiming, no, the masks were actually stolen. I don't buy it. I can't tell you exactly what. I've looked up a couple different outlets. They reported something similar. Masks were leaving France, headed for the UK because the hospitals need them. But Emmanuel Macron said they are requisitioning all medical supplies, masks particularly, for their hospitals. They need it more. The European Union, it's supposed to be this grand unifying entity. It's a union to combat external threats. There's an area called the Schengen Zone where you're allowed to freely travel about. You don't need a passport. You can just drive through. Kind of like if you were to drive from New York to, Connecticut. You just, all of a sudden you see a sign saying, welcome to Connecticut. That's what the European Union was supposed to be. But since the global pandemic, we've seen this completely fall apart. Or maybe it was never there in the first place. Germany shut its borders down. That would be kind of like, I know it's not the same. I've mentioned this before. But imagine you're in, Illinois, and they shut down all roads out of Illinois. And you couldn't leave. That's what it kind of feels like. Now with this latest story, things are getting really scary. So I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna read this story, and I just want to tell you, I am not here to tell you what you want to hear. I am not going to try and pony up to the people who are saying that I'm fear mongering. Tim, you better calm down. Okay, no, I won't talk about it anymore. No, sorry. And I'm not gonna do the opposite. I'm not gonna needlessly throw up stories that are shocking and terrifying. Although I may have put up many stories that are shocking and terrifying, I will just let you know it's because I'm really concerned about this. I'm telling you exactly what I'm reading, how I feel. I have no scripts. There's nothing. I just have the stories. I'm literally just saying how I feel on the internet. And I could be wrong. I feel like some of these things may be a little shocking, maybe over the top. I don't know. All I know is these stories kind of freak me out. I'm going to read it for you. They say French border guards impounded trucks filled with 130,000 face masks bound for the UK, leading to hurried negotiations between the British and French governments. The masks were meant for brave NHS workers battling coronavirus across the country. After realizing what was on board, border guards in France held the truck in the wake of President Emmanuel Macron's promise to requisition face masks for the French crisis, reported The Sun. This came just a day after another truck bound for the UK, this time stocked with hand sanitizer, was delayed by authorities on the other side of the channel. Officials in the UK were swiftly made aware of both incidents. A government source told The Sun, on Tuesday night, French authorities stopped the hand sanitizer and confiscated the lot. On Wednesday night, it was lorries full of FFP3 face masks to protect staff. However, another source told the newspapers both incidents were dealt with relatively quickly. There is a clear understanding between countries that only a united approach will tackle the public health emergency all countries face. They go on to give some stats and say, it appears to have been a misunderstanding. We're confident it won't happen again. On March 3rd, President Macron posted on Twitter that the French authorities would requisition all stocks in the production of masks. Brexiteer Ian Duncan Smith, the former Conservative leader, told The Sun, this shows you all you need to know about European cooperation. Europe is in lockdown and each nation has been left to their own devices. I have heard, and I think maybe they're trying to claim that these supplies were released, and that may be the case. So I have another source from The Sun we can go through, but a lot of people are saying that the story's wrong. The confusion is what's worrying me. Perhaps it really is that the masks were released, but we do have a tweet from Emmanuel Macron. He says, requisition. We commandeer all stocks and the production of protective masks. We will distribute them to health professionals and French people with coronavirus. I'm not surprised if that's the case. Why would they say you can have the masks in our country? Now, the questions I have, where did the masks come from? Were they made in France? Were they shipping through France? What would be worrying to me is, let's say they were made in, Ukraine, and someone was driving them through France and France stopped them and said, nope, you're here. It's ours now. I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened. And I can tell you that some people are saying They were released. They're going to be released. It was a mistake. The Daily Mail didn't report that. The story I have here from yesterday, mask raiders, French border guards seized 2 lorries carrying $130,000 coronavirus face masks for hero NHS medics. The cargo was being urgently ferried in a major boost for overstretched UK medics. We can see there's photographs of it. But French border guards impounded the trucks. The seizure came just 24 hours after another British-bound vehicle was seized. A government source said, there you go, it happened. And I don't really see any other updates. Both incidents were dealt with relatively quickly. It appears to have been a misunderstanding. So does that mean that they've released it? I honestly don't know. Europe is in lockdown and each nation has been left to their own devices. So much for the European Union, right? Paracetamol exports from Britain have been banned as ministers move to protect vital stocks. Officials have halted firms from shipping 82 key drugs abroad, including adrenaline, insulin, and common painkillers. Health Minister Lord Bethel said, NHS staff are going above and beyond to provide world-class care to patients, and we are supporting them in every way we can. So, sounds to me, maybe there's more developments. I did a bunch of searches to figure out what was going on. This is the story where it stands as far as I could tell. But even the UK is not going to be giving up their supplies. It looks like everyone is basically saying, we're in trouble, and we are not going to extend our neck out for you. The United States has closed its northern border, its southern border, and it stands to reason you will see this escalate. The latest updates for those that have missed my earlier segment video, maybe you didn't see it, is that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to be deployed to New York. Donald Trump has declared it. It was FEMA, and then Trump approved the declaration of New York a major disaster area. I want to show you a thread and some optimistic posts, and we'll talk about the merits of them. So I'm not gonna only show you the negative or only the positive. I want to have a real conversation about this, but I want to make one very, very clear point that for those that may have missed my earlier segment, Italy reported about 26 deaths per hour yesterday at 627 deaths in a single day. The flu has a mortality rate of about 4 deaths per hour based on estimates from the CDC in the low end, potentially 8 or 9 deaths per hour in the high end. So the coronavirus is exponentially getting worse. Maybe because it's so bad, it'll slow down, but we are taking very dramatic measures. Maybe we will stop this before it gets that bad. That being said, I want to show you this thread that's been getting shared around by a lot of people. Evidence over hysteria, COVID-19. And this takes a rather positive approach. And I'll show you a few things that could be good news because data could be misinterpreted. So I'm then going to show you why, from another personality, why this may be misguided. So again, I don't want to just send you all this negative information. I don't want to send you, candy canes and rainbows. There are a lot of people saying, ignore it. It's fine. The flu is worse. There are a lot of people screaming the end is nigh. I think this is going to get bad. So let me just say, as we start looking at the breakdown of data in January, I felt like this would reach us and we needed supplies. About a few weeks later, after I said, hey, make sure you have emergency supplies, because guess what? Sometimes it rains, sometimes it floods, sometimes there's tornadoes. Sure enough, we started seeing raids on stores. And I called it. I don't think I'm always right. I really don't. But I do think that I have been at least right enough over the past several weeks to think that I'm still likely correct, now. I was skeptical at first. Now we're seeing the army being called in, and I do think things are going to get worse. There are people calling for a national lockdown, but the DHS is saying that won't happen. I guess in that regard, we'll see. I can't really predict. What I can say is I think we are going to see massive, the economic crisis it's bad. It is real bad. And we are going to see dramatic and potentially, I'm not an economist, but bad inflation. We're going to see hospitals being overloaded. And the stories from doctors about seeing these coronavirus patients are scary. So I want to show you this. In the Medium post, he says, essentially, these charts don't really tell you anything. They're vanity metrics. People are looking at these and they're thinking it's terrifying. And of course, relativity is important, right? You'll see this massive spike. But if we scaled down the numbers, or I should say scaled up the numbers, then you would see this hockey stick become very, very small. So it's all about how they frame this. Take a look at this. We can see these red bubbles all over the world. For those that are listening, I'll explain. It's a map of the world with red dots all over it, explaining where the cases are. The size of the red dot is arbitrary. You could shrink it down to the size of a small city and it would look like there was nothing. So these are vanity metrics you need to be careful of because they can be misleading. He says, here are new cases time-lapsed by country and date of first 100 total cases. We can see that the US is growing faster than many other countries. Spain is growing faster than we are. And that's in terms of how many people are infected. We can see here another chart showing that the US is tracking to grow very, very quickly. But he does something interesting. On a per capita basis, we shouldn't be panicking. Every country has a different population size, which skews aggregate and cumulative case comparisons. By controlling for population, you can properly weigh the number of cases in context of local population size. Viruses don't acknowledge our human borders. The US population is 5.5 times greater than Italy, 6 times larger than South Korea, and 25% the size of China. What he's basically saying, and he's making an excellent point here, when we look at these graphs comparing the US to other countries, seeing the amount of cases growing, it's not taking into consideration that we got a ton of people. So if you compare the US to Europe as a whole, things might make more sense. But Europe, I believe, still has, like, Europe as a whole has double the population, maybe just the EU. It's really hard to do it that way. The best thing you can do, and he points this out, per capita. So per 1 million people, the US has 59 cases per 1 million, and we're a little bit worse than China. Italy, more than 10 times that. So I'm not saying, look, I want to make sure this is really clear. By all means, you should be taking care of yourself. You should be calm, prepared, rational. People are panicking right now and it is causing a serious problem, and other people are ignoring it. These two extremes are really, really bad. You should just, calm, strategy, prepare the way you need to. But this is good data, right? The total number of cases in the USA is 19,658. But there are still some problems with this method. When we look at the total cases and compare them per capita, what he's not showing you is the time difference. The USA has been seeing the increase delayed relative to Europe because it was in Europe first. In the next couple of weeks, we could see the spike hit us, and then per capita, we could be worse off. So while this is good data for the total numbers, it's not perfect. He says that it's spreading, but probably not accelerating. And that, I got to be honest, doesn't mean a whole lot to me. We are doing we're taking draconian measures to slow this thing down. France just seized masks. All right. Yes, it likely won't accelerate. We'll start bending the curve down. That's the point. You've got the major spike and you want it to start flattening out, and then you want it to even out over time. We're taking dramatic actions. That's why it's probably not accelerating. So here's what I'm going to do. This is a very, very, let me show you the bullet points because I really don't have time to read the whole post from him. But he says it's likely to burn off. Children and teens aren't at risk. Strong but unknown viral effect. What about asymptomatic spread? 93% of people who think they are positive aren't. This is a big one. Tons of people are hypochondriacs, thinking they've got it. I can't tell you how many people have said, I swear I had it, man. I know. It's like, dude, just stop. You don't know. There's no point pretending like you did. And the people who are calling up, freaking out because they got sick during flu season is frustrating. The issue is that if you have specific symptoms, then a test is necessary. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they can't get tests. Look, it is a tough situation right now. But I believe he's wrong on a few of these. Declining fatality rate is good. 1% of cases will be severe, but 19 to 23% are being hospitalized. In New York, Cuomo said 23% are being hospitalized. That's why they're setting up emergency hospitals, field hospitals. Start with basic hygiene, more data, open schools, open public spaces, support business and productivity. People fear what the government will do, not infection. Expand medical capacity. Don't let them forget it, and vote. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump over to Will Chamberlain. You may be familiar with him. He runs humanevents.com. He's a good dude. You should follow him on Twitter. And it's not Wilt, it's Will Chamberlain. People always say that. But he said a lot of people are sharing out this piece by Agent on COVID-19 that I think is profoundly misguided. It combines a pile of statistics with a very poor policy argument that I'll rebut here in a thread. The beginning of the argument. Let's start his analogy about the first rule of medicine being do no harm. This is an asinine analogy. Every policy has trade-offs and causes harm to someone. In a pandemic, the first rule is to survive, avoid risk of ruin. Ginn complains that local governments and politicians are inflicting massive harm and disruption with little evidence to support their draconian edicts. The problem? You don't wait for your house to burn down before you buy homeowners insurance. This is a point I've been making to everybody who says, but there's so many more flu deaths. The issue is the mortality rate, You know what, man? The first time I covered this, I was like, we got nothing to worry about. Now, if the coronavirus ends up with like an extended incubation period and it's airborne, then we've got something to be concerned about. And then sure enough, the tests came out where they're like 2-week incubation period, maybe even a month in some rare cases, and it's airborne. And I was like, oh man, because it travels undetected for weeks. That's why it's spreading. So what we're doing now is saying, if we get out in front of it, we shut it down. If we wait until it gets bad, then it'll get out of control, and we don't want to be 2 steps behind it. It is an invisible threat. Like the president said, we are facing an invisible threat, and he's right, which means we don't know where it's lurking, so we need to cover all our bases. I agree with Will on this one. We want to be buying the insurance before the fire starts. Will says, our knowledge about the contagiousness and severity of COVID-19 is limited at this stage. We have some stats and can make guesses as to the possible range. We don't know. What we know is that it can cause absolutely unacceptable outcomes, ruin. The demand for better evidence before acting gets it completely backwards. If you are in a position of uncertainty with some risk of ruin, you take precautions until you get better evidence. If there's uncertainty about your pilot skill, do you get off the plane? Next, Ginn talks about basic hygiene. All well and good until he talks about how masks don't work because people touch their face. That misses the point. Masks are less about protecting yourself and more about making sure you don't transmit the disease to others. And I've brought that point up too. One of the reasons doctors wear masks is because when they're treating people, they don't want to get them sick with anything they might have, especially what you see in the operating room. But also, masks work best in combination with other protective gear. Also, we want the masks to be going to medical professionals who have a very high risk of exposure because they're our front line. The doctors and nurses and other medical technicians that are working in hospitals right now and the people delivering their supplies on the front line. If they start getting sick, then this grows out of control. Next, Ginn talks about the value of more data. Better testing will allow us to go back to work, confident that we can avoid risk of ruin. But again, he is too aggressive. We shouldn't open public life just to have more data. Remember the first rule, avoid risk of ruin. Next, he opposes closing schools. First, he says it's expensive. That's something to care about when the risk of ruin is mitigated. Second, he talks about the reduction in medical personnel, which is relevant. We do need to make sure medical personnel can get childcare. Here's where the arguments get really asinine. 1, evidence is really limited at this point. We don't know just how likely children are to get infected in various places. 2, even if children are more likely to get infected at home, reducing possible transmission events is good. And I will point out, this guy's arguing that, children and teens are a low risk. That's actually partially true. Younger people, and I don't want to say children or teens, younger people are being hospitalized at a higher rate than other age groups, not teenage. So these are people above 20. Just keep that in mind. We don't need schools as a single point of testing. We can do drive-through testing like in South Korea that doesn't require mass gatherings of students. Discounts that it's not just students at school, but teachers and parents as well. Here's where Ginn's naive empiricism is just appalling. Shuttering the local economy is not a distraction. There is certainly not overwhelming data that community-based spread is not a threat. Italy's ICUs are overwhelmed. We don't have specific examples of it spreading through restaurants and gyms. Well, we're pretty confident that the virus lives on surfaces, and there sure are a lot of surfaces in those places. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And also, I've advised my friends not to go to the gym. They mostly shut them down. But you got to understand that people are covered in sweat. They're breathing heavily. And that's what transmits the virus. The breathing, the particles from your spit in your lungs. So yeah, gym, not a good idea. Isolating every family member in their home is a perfect situation for infection transmission among family members. This is just a ridiculous argument. The point is reducing spread between families. China wouldn't have beat the bug by this logic. Well, I don't even know if China did, Will, to be honest. Evidence from South Korea, Singapore shows you can continue on with life. He says, Will adds, South Korea and Singapore have 1, tons of masks, and 2, tons of testing. Mask wearing prevents spread. Testing means infected individuals get quarantined. We don't have either yet. He goes on to say, my word, the statistical naivety. Quote, the data shows that the overwhelming majority of working people will not be personally impacted. Way too early to be making definitive statements like that. Oh, and yes, quote, we do need money for this fight. Money printer, go, burr. Yeah, they're printing money like crazy. So I don't want to read through. It's a very, very long thread. Very, very long thread. I'll just read Will's finale. He said, oh, actually, that's not even the end. Will's going all out on this one. In sum, the article is just profoundly unsophisticated when it comes to risk. This kind of thinking led to the housing crisis, discounts the risk of terror, ignores fat tails. If there is uncertainty and near-term risk of ruin, take precautions. So I know there's probably a lot of context I didn't get through for both of these stories, but what I want to say in summation to these things. Right now, there are a lot of people throwing around numbers, acting like this proves something or something else, myself included. Like when I see the death stats, and I try my best to break them down to inform you of what's going on so that you can be better informed. I will err on the side of caution. I always do. It's like I told the story in the other video, the earlier segment. I wore a bulletproof vest when I went to Ferguson, got shot a couple times. So that's why I err on the side of precaution. Better safe than sorry. But there are certain things you have to take risks on. So when I went and covered a conflict zone, I know I have to go into a dangerous place, but I'll do what I can to protect myself. That means there are some things we must do that will put us at risk, and there are some things we must do to mitigate that risk. While I appreciate people trying to remain optimistic, this thread is going around saying it's a really great read and it's intelligent analysis and people should, take this seriously and calm down and all that stuff. But to me, it just sounds like a more sophisticated version of it's just the flu, bro. There's too much we don't know. What we do know is that Italy in one day had 627 dead people and had to bring in the military to move the corpses. That sounds freaky. And to me, it is. That literally happened. It's in the news. The Italian military came in because the morgues were overloaded and the bodies had to be carried out. You can say whatever you want about analysis. You can say whatever you want about the numbers, the stats, the jobs, the economy. I get it, man. I'm listening. Now I want to ask you a question. When it comes to 26 deaths per hour, which well exceeds the flu, and yes, maybe it's a lot of old people, what should we do? Serious question. Right now, we're taking a ton of harsh and draconian measures, to me, that are shocking, and I'm not a fan of them. But I don't know what else to do, man. So look, this is why I would never consider, I don't know why anybody would want to be in public office. That's just nightmarish. To be that person to pull the trigger on what you should or shouldn't do amidst all these people screaming about what is or isn't more important. The economic toll we're facing could actually end up being worse than this disease. I don't know. What I do know is that with people don't have resources or money or access to supplies, they die too. So there's good arguments as to why we need to figure out how to make sure that the economy keeps moving. Because if we lose confidence in the system and we lose access to resources, people will freak out. There's also good evidence to show that if we don't get a handle on this, it's a novel virus we could be facing on par with 1918. If you don't believe me, read the thing I was talking about from Stanford. It was a novel virus with a mortality rate of 2.5%. Well, globally, we're looking at 3.4. Italy is 7%. In the US, I believe it's just over 1%. So it could be not as bad. But it could also be not as bad because we're taking serious precautions and we have better technology. So I'll leave it there. The last thing you should do is freak out. The people running around buying toilet paper like crazy are nuts, and the people who are doing nothing are nuts. But the people who are paying attention, staying calm, making sure they have basic levels of supplies and not hoarding, then you're doing well, and that's the best I can offer up right now. Next segment will be coming up at 4 p.m. at youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel, and I will see you all there.